What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley coming at you with the one, the only, the certified fantabulous co-host himself, Mr. Grant Hughes. No small talk, really. We are gathered here today. That's going to be my new thing, Grant. Bleacher Report asked us if we could come up with every NBA team's Mount Rushmore since 2000. So we're dealing with just 2000. And there are a few franchises that really need to keep that in mind. What are we doing it since, Grant?
2000. That's what
2000.
And thank God, by the way, because it's impossible otherwise.
I advocated for doing every team's Mount Rushmore since 2020. That apparently just wasn't. So what are some of the things you put into when you were building the Mount? Grant did the West. I did the East. We did not have a say in who each other selected, which also makes this fun. So we'll get to respond and react in real time. What types of things did you think about as you were building each team's Mount Rushmore?
I think there's just a handful of pretty sort of inarguable criteria. One is just, player success and accolades. Like if a guy, we'll talk about plenty of guys that like multiple MVPs, you're just going to be on the Mount Rushmore. And because odds are that coincided with like some high level of team success. Also a pretty big one for me. Like if you were involved in a big way in maybe franchise X had like a good run this century, and if you were involved in that, really good shot that's going to get you on the Mount Rushmore. Also vibes. There's a couple guys I threw in here that like on individual merit just shouldn't be here, but it's like I'm trying to put myself in the position of that team's fan base, and it's like we'll talk to them when we talk about them when we get to them, but it's I kind of just had a feeling of like this guy feels like he needs to be on the Mount Rushmore, even if there's no statistical case in a lot of situations. Similarity for you or anything else I missed?
I don't know how many vibes guys I have, like pure just vibes guy, where it's a Udonis Haslem for the Miami Heat would be mostly a vibes guy.
Yeah.
What I did wait a lot of the time, though, especially if the selections were rather, how do I put this kindly, sparse or hollow, was if they just did something. It was, they made an all-NBA team and they were only there for 2 seasons. You know what? You made it. If the other options I thought were that bleak. So I think I might have weighted the individual or team accolades more so than you did, where it's like maybe you don't associate this player as much. But that's what makes this fun, is that it's entirely subjective. And honestly, it's almost easier to do this if you factor in all time, because, which we did not. It's just since, what is it?
2000, I think you said?
2000. It's because there's so many defaults when you're doing it all time. It actually would have been easier, I think, had we done it that way, but we weren't asked to do it that way, so we did not.
Yeah. Last thing. The other thing that I did think about, and this made for some tough decisions, is like all things being equal, I'm going to need the player to be most associated with this team, assuming they played on more, several, where it's like, maybe this wasn't his absolute apex. Ideally it was, and it was like a long enough stretch, but I like for the Mount Rushmore to be populated by players who, when you think of them, you like think of them in this jersey, for example. And like that gets really tricky for some of mine, but that was the last thing I wanted to add.
The last thing I would have, but I think it dovetails with what you just said, was that sort of because I needed to come up with a determining factor for teams that actually had deeper options, where there's like, it could be 6 or 7 dudes. I think I looked at, who did I think had the highest individual peak at that point? If they were similar team accolades and things like that, that ended up being a determining factor for me in certain instances as well. Okay. Are we ready to get started?
No time like the present.
We are allegedly going to go alphabetically. Let's see how we do. We begin with the Atlanta Hawks. So I have these listed alphabetically. We did not rank any of these 4 teams within these 4 players in the tier. The Atlanta Hawks: Al Horford, Joe Johnson, Paul Millsap, and Trae Young. Al Horford, I think he could have made the Celtics one if we really wanted him to. He was just part of some of the most menacing Hawks teams out there. Did everything. Was he a center? Was he a power forward? Do you remember that debate? Loved it. Joe Johnson got buckets for the Hawks. Trae Young already just leads the franchise in assists. I know he's become a divisive figure, but since this quarter century or so, he's clearly needs to be in here for me. I struggled with the 4th spot. I ended up giving it to Paul Millsap. I thought a lot about Josh Smith. He comes up in all these statistical searches, but none of them are there's a lot of counting stats, but it's not efficient. They're not efficient counting stats, and he was always, people thought about his untapped potential. The Hawks didn't experience a ton of success with him, so I went with Paul Millsap, to where it's he was, I think, the better, more valuable player on teams that were just, frankly, better overall. And so for the Hawks, Al Horford, Joe Johnson, Paul Millsap, and Mr. Trae Young.
I think that's right. Josh Smith was the only one. Well, one other option. You could have just gone Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, Damari Carroll, Millsap, and Horford, and just put that incredible. Just make a rule that you could have 5, just for that one really great Hawks team. Smith, I think, is the right guy to exclude, though, because like my first thought was like kind of empty numbers, and also they just didn't win very much when he was like a key figure there. So I have no notes on this one. I think you got it right. not that we're you get an A-. I'm still in the grading mindset.
The Boston Celtics were quite a bit tougher. I ended up settling on Jaylen Brown, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Tatum. I do think 3 of these guys are absolute locks. When you look at KG, the stuff he did defensively, won a title while being like shuttling between their second and third option on offense. Paul Pierce, the truth, huge for that team. Just he's more synonymous with the Celtics right now than a Jason Tatum when you're looking at just since 2000. Jason Tatum did not win Finals MVP, but was the best player on a championship team while being so young. That's actually kind of insane. I didn't know what to do with the last spot. The names I considered were Rajon Rondo, who, he's tough because his peak was actually pretty high and it lasted longer than you think. It's kind of conflated against everything else that kind of happened, like when this Celtics team was stripped apart. I also considered Ray Allen. Al Horford deserves an honorable mention. Still, had Jason Tatum never get injured, he's probably still there, quite frankly. I ended up going with Jaylen Brown. I think that's when I look at the individual player, he did win a Finals MVP too, so that has to count for something too. So I just view his peak, like from an individual perspective as a scorer and as a defender, better than anything Rondo specifically did when he was known for his defense and his passing. But I do think if you were going to go, I'm curious what your thoughts would be here. If you're going to go with someone else, I think it probably has to be Rondo.
It's hard. I mean, I think it's Ray Allen jumps. I think you got it right. I'll start with that just because this team has, I think, just the 2 titles this century, and you've got the 2 most important players from both of those. So it's just like, Tatum, Brown, the Finals MVP is going to be one of those where like, it'll be like the Iguodala Finals MVP where it's like, yeah, but I think we know like Tatum just mattered more still. It's fine that he got it. Like Curry mattered more, Iguodala got it.
It's less egregious that Brown got it than Iguodala though.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. No question. But just take the 1-2 from the 2 title teams and you're like, I'm not going to quibble. Like Ray Allen just isn't above Garnett or Pierce in terms of importance. And I don't think Rondo is either. And then Tatum, I think, is like indisputable. Brown, if you had to knock one off, it's probably Brown, but like, how are you justifying a Finals MVP not being on the Mount? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the right place to land.
If you were going to go for vibes, would Marcus Smart have a case?
That's another name where it's like, there's probably a contingent of Celtics fans that he's bulletproof too, but I don't think that would have been the objective. I support vibes picks. I want to get that on the record, but I don't think this was the time.
The Brooklyn Nets Mount Rushmore since 2000. This was interesting. I went with Vince Carter, Richard Jefferson, Jason Kidd, and Brook Lopez. I think when you look at those 3, I mean, Kidd is just the most inarguable of the bunch. That was the Nets. Like, he led the Nets to the finals. That's a big deal. He's still, maybe that's not the team he's most associated with, but he's probably the star that's most associated with the Nets specifically. Vince Carter was still like playing at or near his peak for a lot of his Nets tenure. Richard Jefferson was a fringe all-star on a lot of really good Nets teams. And I think with Brook Lopez, if you were looking at, there were probably some better one-year individual peaks from a Kevin Durant or a Kyrie Irving. James Harden was there for a hot minute, in case anybody remembers. But, like, this is just, like, the guy. When you're looking at the Brooklyn Nets in terms of longevity, he made an all-star team with them. He wasn't known as the defensive force, as a rim protector for most of his tenure with them. That started to change under Kenny Atkinson a bit. But, like, he was their number 1 option at points for, like, a steady amount of time. And so I think, as of right now, there's Jason Kidd, but then I think Brook Lopez is the player that I'm, since 2000, I associate with the Nets, like, second most, other than Jason Kidd.
It's interesting that you've got 2 guys here in Kidd and Carter that, like, I definitely thought about. I mean, I'm sure you thought, we'll get to Toronto, like, there's kind of no doubt there, but, like, this is like encapsulating the Nets, right? Where it's like, yeah, they've had some guys, but they're like, nobody's ever really a true net in the same, there's just been all these dead periods in the franchise history. Like, I think the only other way that I'm on board here. I think the only tweak you could make is if you wanted to just honor those really good beginning of the century teams that Kidd and Jefferson were on, and you could go like Kenyon Martin and Kerry Kittles, or like Keith Van Horn, or like you'd pull from that era entirely. But I mean, you can't pretend that like Kerry Kittles had a better Nets performance than Vince Carter. Like it's, so that's an example of like, we're just kind of weighing apples and oranges in some cases.
Who's the guy would be the one that gets knocked off? Is it Carter or Joe? Because I'm assuming like Brook Lopez is first in points and blocks in franchise history. He's just
I think maybe it's weird, but it might be Carter just because he's like a lock for another team, and I kind of factored that in sometimes if I was gonna make an exclusion.
You say he was a lock, but he wasn't actually a lock for me.
You did Toronto, so I don't know who you picked. It would have been a lock for me, but I'm excited for the debate later maybe.
We move on to the Charlotte Hornets. Look, guys, it's tough. It's rough. I struggled. I talked to Grant about it. I settled on LaMelo Ball, Kemba Walker, Gerald Wallace, and Al Jefferson. I think Kemba Walker and Gerald Wallace are just in here. The longevity with the Hornets, Kemba making All-NBA team with the Hornets. Al Jefferson probably stands out as the most egregious, but the Hornets have had so little success that if you made an All-NBA team during this stretch as a member of the Hornets, it's him and it's Kemba, and that's it. And that's the last time, too, is when Al Jefferson was on there scoring like 20 points a game or whatever it was. They're in that playoff series against the Heat. I actually thought they were going to win. I thought there was a chance that the Hornets might go to the conference finals. That's the last time I felt like really, really good about the Charlotte Hornets. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going with Al Jefferson. I don't care that his tenure there was basically nil compared to some other dudes that I could have went with. But when you start to look at the alternatives where it's, all right, Marvin Williams, I don't hate it, but like Cody Zeller, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, I'm absolutely not picking Miles Bridges. Raymond Felton, like it's starting to get rough, and I think that's even maybe some people wouldn't have LaMelo Ball on this, but he's the most electrifying player that they've had, even more so than Kemba Walker this quarter century. He just hasn't been healthy, and it's just when you think of someone who has the it factor as a star, he just plays that style, is that type of polarizing player. I understand he hasn't been on a lot of good Hornets teams. I think you could say that about anyone, frankly, who has played for the Charlotte Hornets since 2000.
That and also like they're starting behind because they didn't exist for the first several years of the century. So like, and because they're an expansion team initially as the Bobcats, you're just gonna be terrible. So this is probably the worst collection of players we're gonna cover. I think maybe we can reassess that if we get another ugly one. But it's kind of like, what do you want them to do? They haven't existed for that long, and they've basically never been good outside of a couple years in there.
What would be like your runner-up for the fifth spot if you had to pick one for this team?
I mean,
I thought it was Marv. Was my guess.
It's either him. Like it could be Okafor. Okay. Even though it's such a short career. It can't be Bridges. It can't be MKG. Like this speaks to the issue here. If you're just sorting by win shares, Kidd-Gilchrist is 7th, and like we remember him for 1, a funky shot, and 2, being very bad for a number 2 pick. And he's in consideration here. That just like there's not a lot to choose from.
Do you think that we could just put Anthony Davis here as a nod to like how unfortunate that draft was for them?
I think Charlotte fans would appreciate it if you want to do that.
Next up, we have the Chicago Bulls. This one, maybe it should have been harder, but it wasn't for me. Jimmy Butler, Luol Deng, Joakim Noah, Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose is one of the biggest what ifs in NBA history. And had he never gotten injured, maybe he wins multiple MVPs. I think the Bulls are probably certainly just a contender for longer. Maybe they even win a title. I associate Luol Deng and Joakim Noah, both, and Noah specifically, with Derrick Rose, but then also a lot post Rose injury, to where those guys carried a heavy workload. They typified the whole blue chip, we have more than enough to win ethos that Tom Thibodeau espoused for like that entire era. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy Butler's kind of an extension of that. There's also two what ifs with him. What if Derrick Rose never gets injured? Does Jimmy Butler become Jimmy Butler at some point, and how do those two coexist together? And then also, the biggest demerit against Butler for this would be the Bulls actually trading him. Like, he could have built up more longevity for this franchise, but I think you could argue, because of the Rose injury, that he is the player, had he stayed here, that would have reached the highest peak with the Bulls. That doesn't necessarily factor in, but when you're kind of looking at the other alternatives, I think he might be the one people would quibble over a little bit, but are you really going to go with Kirk Heinrich, Taj Gibson, or Zach LaVine, or somebody else over him? I couldn't get there.
No, I couldn't either. I think the only player I would consider, and I like don't ask me who I'd kick off because it wouldn't be any of these, is Gibson. I just feel like he's very much it with this same group. This is also a situation. I don't know if you ran into this. We couldn't pick coaches, but like Tibbs really would be someone you would consider if coaches were involved, just because like he defines that highly successful era of Bulls basketball, which really is like as good as it got this century.
Right.
So, like, and it's just, it's so associated with him. I had a handful of situations like that. Didn't pick any coaches because that's not part of this, but that's kind of like where my head goes with this group. But this is the group. I don't think you missed anybody.
Do we shout out Aaron Brooks? He might have come pretty close to making it. No.
It's been a long time since Aaron Brooks has been shouted out, so please do.
We're on to the Cleveland Cavaliers. This was actually tough. I went with Kyrie, LeBron, Kevin Love, and then Zydrunas Ilgauskas. I think Kyrie, LeBron, locks, no notes. You run into some issues when you're trying to pick the final two slots. I think Anderson Varejao will be a popular pick. I'm giving Kevin Love a bump because he played a major role on the 2016 title team. Now, maybe you could pick Tristan Thompson for that same reason as well, and he was incredibly valuable to what the Cavs did defensively throughout that run. But, like, maybe during the finals, could you make the case that Thompson was more valuable than Love? Perhaps, but like wire to wire, it's still Kevin Love for me. So maybe the move would have been, we'll just pick everyone from that 2016 title team and leave off Big Z. But he's like the best teammate LeBron, like in terms of high-end teammate that LeBron ever played with that first time around, right? And so he has the tenure, of course, the longevity is there. So I felt compelled to go with him here.
I think if you're gonna, you have to have Kyrie, LeBron, and Love just because they won a title. And then if you're picking one player from the like outside that section of their history, it's probably, I think it is Ilgauskas, but it's funny that when you think on those early LeBron Cavs teams, depending on the year, it'd be like, it's probably Mo Williams, or like, I don't know, Daniel Gibson hit a lot of really big shots. Maybe it's him.
Booby Gibson. Yeah.
You can dig pretty deep. Just, I mean, what that does is speak to the just total lack of quality around LeBron those early years that you could have a conversation about some of those guys. But yeah, I think this is right. Again, you win a championship with a team that does not have a lot of championships or like any others.
That city was in like what, almost a 60-year champion. It was 52 years, like, whatever it was, drought.
If anything, you could just pick whoever you'd put Thompson on there over Ilgauskas. But I like the Ilgauskas inclusion. I made a lot of similar moves.
Would you have considered any of the current era Cavs, whether it's Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, or I think Mobley was, I'm not going to lie, Mobley was just a little bit tempting, but I think I was getting ahead of my steez there, where it's always coming off DPOY, the best season, but he's only been there for 3 years, and they have not even advanced to a not that that's not a, demerit against him, but they haven't even gone to a conference final,
right?
So I don't know
that like, if you told me that Mobley or Donovan Mitchell had twice as many years with the team as they do right now, and like similar levels of playoff success, I think you could talk about one of them over Ilgauskas, but just the length of tenure is not enough, and then the heights reached are not high enough. I think for
had
that
they been the finals team from the East this year, that would have, like against the Thunder, that would have made something. I think it would have had to have been Mobley or Mitchell in that, even though Mitchell's tenure is so short. That might have made it interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, take a break, Dan. We're on to the West. I have the Dallas Mavericks. Dirk Nowitzki, just what are we doing? 21 years with the same team. Took less at the end. That's a vibes pick because he was trying to help prolong like the competitive window of the team.
Yes,
one of the greatest scorers of all time.
Did he take as much less as LeBron did with the Lakers in the summer of 2024?
I think he took like 10x less than LeBron's discount with the Lakers. So, and then Dirk is obvious, 2011 title, best player. He's been an MVP, all this stuff. Jason Terry was the other guy I picked from that group, the 2011-ish team. You could go, well, we could talk about who you could go with after I get through this for. Luka Doncic, like, he took him to the finals, one of the best first 5-year stretches of any NBA career in history. He's gone, but like, it was enough. You know what I mean? Like just the individual production. I think
on Nico Harrison's Mount Rushmore since 2000 for the Mavs?
He only puts hard workers on his Mount Rushmore, which is why Dwight Powell would probably be on his. That's my fourth pick. This is a vibes pick. He's been there forever. He's very much in the Udonis Haslem territory. Only Dirk has played more games as a Mav this century than Dwight Powell, which is impressive because like he's not been in the rotation for a good chunk of it. Like he was a starter for a handful of years. He's just such a staple that I did end up including him over certainly better play. Sean Marion has been there. Like Vince Carter has been there just for a minute. Like you could go down the list. I mean, there's a lot of other options. I'm trying not to slight anybody. Like you could go back, Steve Nash. Like Nash was actually a tough one because him and Dirk, like under Don Nelson, before Nash goes to Phoenix, that offense was like, oh my God, can you believe how many threes this team is shooting and how fast they're playing? Nash was part of that. It's just, spoiler, he'll be there for Phoenix. And I don't know, I wanted to throw Powell up there just as a nod to the longevity thing.
I think this is the first, well, granted, we've only gone through mine, so of course I'm going to agree with all of mine. I think this is the first disagreement we have because I would have put like Kidd or Steve Nash on here. Sean Marion. I mean, the Kidd was on the championship team too. Could you even gone with Tyson Chandler just for setting that tone defensively?
You could put Chandler.
Dwight Powell's certainly the vibes pick, but it's just, has he played? Is he as good at that as Udonis Haslem would be for? Like, you could pick Udonis Haslem for the Heat. I think people would be like, yeah, that makes sense. But like, does Powell have that same level of influence? I don't.
No. That's why this is a good exercise, Dan, because I'm not actively trying to court controversy, but if it happens,
who was your? I think I probably. Oh man, Nash was actually there longer than I thought for the early 2000s. I might have leaned him. Who would your fifth pick have been? Would it have been Kidd or Marion?
I think it's Nash or Kidd. Like, you can't go back as far as like Michael Finley because he was a fair amount of his best years were in the 90s. Like Josh Howard is pretty high up on the win shares list. I think like Kidd does have
Peter.
Kidd was there for the championship. I don't know. It just felt like he started there and he was gone forever and he came back. Like, I guess he's probably, I mean, he's a coach now. So maybe that's, I don't know if you get bonus points for that. It would have been Nash or Kidd. Probably Nash just because I'm biased.
I think that's the right answer, actually, rather than the Dwight Powell. I respect the vibes pick, though.
Vibes picks.
Salute to you and your poor decisions.
All right, Denver Nuggets up next. Three no-brainers to me. Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon. They were the three most important players on the title team. Jokic's resume is as good as it gets in the modern era. Like, just compared to some of the other players on other teams, like Murray and Gordon, neither has been an all-star. That's rare, but Denver doesn't have a litany of championships, and the best era of the franchise, outside of maybe one other that didn't win a championship, was run by these three guys. The fourth player is Carmelo. It's easy to forget. I think as I was looking this up, he still has played more seasons in Denver than anywhere else, even though he's so associated with the Knicks. It's just easy to forget that. They made the playoffs every year he was there. He scored a ton. He's second in games played for the Nuggets this century, which is wild to me. So it's been kind of a revolving door without a ton of success, I guess, outside of the Jokic and Melo eras. Any notes there? Does Melo feel wrong to you? I actually did think about maybe do I just add like KCP or something?
I guess the argument there would just be they were on the title team.
Yeah. That's about really
like Chauncey Billups didn't play there that long. I mean, then you're getting into like Nene, Kenneth Faried territory.
Iguodala, even like all the guys. Like who else was on? Ty Lawson, like all these guys that were there.
Prime Ty Lawson, you remember him? Wow,
he was very fast. I remember that.
I think when people try to like talk about Carmelo Anthony and the Nuggets, that they just overthink it. It's all right. Like Jokic is clearly the best player in franchise history, and like Melo didn't win a title, but you said at the top they made the playoffs every year. He scored a ton. Like that team was a contender. At points, teams were flocking to them when he wanted out in 2011. He's one of the best Nuggets of all time. Like there's just, I think we're far enough removed from that situation, right? Where we could just say that and it's like not going to receive a ton of pushback.
No, I think you can in one hand you can hold the truth that like Melo maybe wasn't good enough to be the best player on a championship team, but like nobody else in consideration for this qualifies as that. So, what are we doing?
On to the Detroit Pistons. They are my team. I went into this thinking I'm probably going to pick everyone from that 2004 championship team, but I had to cut one. So I went with Chauncey Billups, Richard Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, and Ben Wallace, which then, of course, leaves out Rasheed Wallace. Ben Wallace is a lock to me. Like all those DPOYs, just a generational defender. I look at Chauncey Billups as also a lock, kind of the driving force of like him and Rip Hamilton were the driving forces of a team's offense that wasn't known for its offense, but Mr. Big Shot Chauncey Billups has to be in there. Rip Hamilton just scored a ton for this team, and the fact that he was scoring so much and played so much on a team that was known for its defense when maybe that wasn't his strong suit. Tayshaun Prince versus Rasheed Wallace gets kind of interesting, but I think the longevity wins out. Tayshaun Prince has played 137 more games than anyone else in a Pistons uniform since 2000.
Yeah.
And he just ranks in the top 5 of all the major counting stats. I actually think that if he played today, he would probably be even more appreciated than he was back then. Like, this is someone who probably would have gotten like two max contract cycles.
It's like a Jaden McDaniels, but maybe better type of guy.
Right.
Like
Definitely, certainly a better playmaker. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the 4 I settled on. Do you have any qualms?
The only one would have been Rashid, but you can't. And Prince is probably, you cannot. Hamilton, Billups, and Wallace are just like they're there. You can't move them. The sheer volume of Prince over Wallace I think Wallace is probably a better player, like just night to night. But I think Prince, his impact overall was just higher.
And the other thing here, too, is like I didn't give much consideration to Andre Drummond. Maybe recency bias would be like, I think we're just so excited about the Pistons that Cade Cunningham can get an honorable mention, but like you can't touch the 2004 title team. Like,
they made the conference finals like how many 8 years in a row? Like some in like 6 in a row. They've like multiple finals. Like they're just. That is the era of Detroit Pistons basketball for the last 25 plus years, since like the early 90s. Here we go. This was the easiest one, I think, for me, for obvious reasons, but also just because like this franchise was absolute trash going back before the 2000s, like really from 94 on. Until you get the We Believe bump in there. We could talk about like maybe do you throw Baron Davis on there as an honorable mention? Probably he'd be the guy. But it's Steph, Clay, Draymond, Iguodala. You could argue Kevon Looney, I guess. But Iguodala, I credit him for one, like, I don't know. There's something valuable to me about him being like, I see what's happening there and I would like to go to there. And then also I'll come off the bench and it sets a culture. He does have the finals MVP, the dubious finals MVP. He was just like the perfect missing piece there. And then there's just no other meaningful team success, and there's no other players with career histories. There's no other MVPs. There's very few All-Stars. There's very few All-NBAs. There's no other DPOYs. Like this one just kind of set itself to me.
You didn't give any like serious thought to 2-time Finals MVP Kevin Durant. That didn't nothing for
you. They won one before he was there, and they won one after. And the three.
What if they don't win one after?
Maybe then. I think that the bookend 22 title really did just make it so it's like it's these 4 guys, and then Durant exists in his own kind of area, and then you have like Looney, Livingston, who else am I?
Barnes.
Like that throw Harrison Barnes on there, why not? Like that class of guys. But if you wanted to go back further, then you have to talk about like Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, like the Monte Ellis of it all. Like those guys just aren't close to the same level. Houston up next for me. I did struggle with this one as I'm looking back at it. So James Harden, one of the single best offensive players of all time. His absolute peak years were here. They just like number one with the bullet. Yao, easily forgotten, but was just an all-star every season he was healthy. The all-star votes from China helped, but like the production was absolutely there. He's another guy that I think if we were playing today, like sneakily might be more valuable just because he would have been a three-point shooter. I have no doubt of it. And if Brook Lopez can survive and be a great defensive big man like he could have. The other two were tough. I went with Clint Capella, who feels like just not quite good enough of a player, but if you're looking for the guy that was there with Harden through some of those like high 50s win totals, some of those conference finals trips, some of those like if not for the Warriors, these Rockets are in a couple finals. Capella's kind of the second guy that's there the whole time. So, easy to forget now, ridiculous offensive rebounder, would catch all the Harden lobs, like just was kind of perfect for that team. Shane Battier is my last one. A little bit of vibes. Also, though, like as I'm looking, he's 6th in win shares on the Rockets since 2000. So the numbers are there. But he was like, he's the no stats all-star. He's the guy that shows up in the Michael Lewis article that puts Daryl Morey on the map as the analytics friendly like GM. Oh. And so like in terms of his impact, I think, because you still associate like with the Rockets with the number crunching and all this Morey stuff, and Battier like is the poster boy for that. So I threw him on there, omitting Tracy McGrady, but which is deeply painful. He's one of my favorite players of the century, but you're going to get him on there for Orlando. I have faith.
Right, but we didn't have this rule where you couldn't pick a player for
No.
two teams, and so I'm staring at this one, and I don't know. By the way, shout out to Clint Capella as we were putting together images for this. Some of the best action shots in the business. I apologize, Clint. I didn't know about your game of the action shots that there were just of you. So I don't know how you leave off Tracy McGrady here, and the thing that I'm harping on, and maybe this is an oversimplification. Here's every Rockets player in franchise history to make multiple All-NBA teams. Hakeem, Harden, Yao, Moses Malone, and T-Mac. So he made 3 All-NBA teams with I know his prime feels like, or his prime and tenure all feel like they were cut short with basically every single team that he was on, specifically the Raptors, the Magic, and the Rockets. But I don't know how he doesn't make, like, even because you have 2 guys that I think could be qualified as either vibes or strictly tenure guys that don't have the highest peaks. I think I would have definitely put T-Mac on here, probably in place of Battier, but maybe in place of Capella.
I think I would kick Capella just because I persuaded myself more with the Battier argument. But I take your point on McGrady. And look, like, I was always a McGrady's better than Kobe guy. I don't know if that's out there, but like that was my hot take in the early 2000s. Really was firm in that. McGrady played basically 3 good seasons with Houston because he was 78 games. That was awesome in his debut, 04-05, 7th in MVP. He plays 47 the next year, is not all NBA. Plays 71 the following year, great, 6th in MVP, 8th in MVP after that. And then the injuries come and he's cooked. So it's like, I was looking at 3 good seasons, which I don't know how you weigh that against like Battier's gotten more. And like the Rockets didn't win a title. They weren't like super dangerous. I just kind of, I mean, they were pretty good, I guess. I don't know. I think you have a good argument for McGrady.
The other thing, too, this was fun. It's just I forget because I always associate Yao with being injured. He just 5 All-NBA teams while he's with Houston.
No, I mean, he's the like one of the forgotten greats of the early and mid-2000s. I think ultimately McGrady is just like the best McGrady is a Magic McGrady. And it's like not close. He was so ridiculously good for them. And so that kind of dimmed my perception of him as a Rocket. I don't think of him as a Rocket.
Was there anyone like Steve Francis or Louis Scola or even Chris Paul because of the heights that the Rockets reached, like as the foremost rival to the Warriors that you considered? Or not really?
Not no to Paul. I just associate Francis and like Coutinho Mobley as another guy, nowhere near the resume, but like those guys were just mostly on not very good Rockets team. And like Francis was electrifying, but like he just actually wasn't objectively that good because he couldn't shoot. He did like he for a minute there he was kind of the centerpiece of that team, but I don't think Francis was a real driver of winning.
On to the Indiana Pacers Mount Rushmore since 2000. I have Paul George, Tyrese Halliburton, Jermaine O'Neal, Miles Turner. I think this might be the single team that I'm least confident in because they have so many good options. I think right off rip, I didn't put Reggie Miller on here because we didn't have post-2000, like we didn't have the best version of Reggie Miller. He still did play, I think it was like 5 seasons logged with the Pacers. So if you want to make the case that he's the franchise icon, he was still serviceable for a lot of that time. So he's a combination of a vibes pick, an icon, and still was an effective player. I totally get that. I think Paul George, those Pacers teams were the primary threat to the Heatles era Miami team with LeBron, D-Wade, and Bosh. Tyrese Halliburton just led the Pacers to consecutive Eastern Conference Finals and then the NBA Finals. I don't know how you don't put him on here. So he was clear. Him and Paul George were the clear locks. Miles Turner has the longevity bump. I think you could make it. Maybe that's the guy you want to bump for Reggie Miller, or maybe that's Jermaine O'Neal. I also think what Jermaine O'Neal did with the Pacers kind of goes underappreciated. Like that dude was just a versatile offensive monster, and the heights that he reached with Indiana. I mean, my God. But this team you could go a number of different directions here. And I think, I don't know how to square away the Miles Turner stuff. He's never been an all-star, but at the same time, like, he was there for a decade. He gets a bump, too, because he survived. He was there for how many years, and he survived trade rumors for the same amount of years. He just kept coming back, set the like stage, or not the stage, but was a tone setter when it comes to those floor spacing rim protector archetypes. And he expanded his game a little bit, but he's the guy who, even though he couldn't rebound as well, even though there were some matchups, we saw it in this year's finals, that weren't great for him, that was the big man, the type of big man that everybody wanted. And he's just been that for so long. And so this is who I settled on. But like I said, aside from Paul George and Tyrese Halliburton, I don't feel great about this one.
No, I think so. Turner is also first in win shares in the franchise for the century. So like any ties probably should be broken in his favor for that reason. If you just go with the numbers, like Danny Granger is someone that a lot of people would clamor for, I think. But I sort of think you need Paul George, and you can't really take two players from like that era, even though George kind of ascended as Granger was falling off. So like George is the right guy from that, because it's not going to be Hibbert, it's not going to be George Hill, David West, those other Lance Stevenson. Oh, Lance Stevenson might have been a vibes pick for me. His bust would be blowing air on the mountain. I think would be good. And then O'Neal is the right pick from the very early 2000s Pacers, because it wouldn't be our test. I don't think Miller was kind of there, but like I think you're right to exclude Miller. He's a pre 2000s kind of guy. So. I'm finding myself agreeing with your picks a lot more than you're agreeing with mine. So either you're argumentative or you did a better job than me.
I'm very argumentative. And also, the thing that's kind of swayed me with, I felt better about picking O'Neal, was he is tied with, it's Reggie Miller and who's the other guy from the Pacers? Paul George. Those are the three guys who have made the most All-NBA teams. They've each made 3 apiece in a Pacers jersey. And so that made me feel better about, and it was also kind of a reminder like, oh, damn, Jermaine O'Neal was just really freaking good. And he's third all-time in franchise history in points. No one's going to catch Reggie Miller, I know. But that one was tough because he's on the Pacers through 2004, 2005, and it's, do you think that I could have justified just being like Reggie instead of like, is it Turner? Is it only, who's the one that gets bumped?
Well, like there's no, if you're picking one guy in franchise history, it's just Miller, right? Like, but that's just not what this is. You know, I think you have to make the cuts where you have to, and Miller just like, post 2000 Reggie Miller was not the best version of Reggie Miller either. Like he was still good for a chunk of that, but you're not putting that player and like what he accomplished on if they'd won a title, then it would have to be, even if he was like towards the end.
That's all.
But
that's all.
That's the bar. All right, I've got the Clippers. The first 3 spots: Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. The Clippers, as much as I've had a couple of these teams, but it's like they had 0 success outside of one Elton Brand led run. I did consider him from the like 06, 07, I think was the year, but couldn't quite get there. Not a long enough prime, not enough team success. Paul, their debate to me is really like, if you had to pick the first spot, is it Paul or is it Griffin? And the case for Paul is like, he just made everything work. Like DeAndre Jordan led the league in effective field goal percentage, like every year from like 12 to 17, and it's because he's catching lobs. Like that's Chris Paul made that happen. But I kept finding myself thinking like, when I think of Lob City, it's always Blake Griffin is first to mind, just because of like he's kind of one of the first viral like superstars where it's just like the next morning, and this is not viral, but it's like, who did he dunk on last night? Or like every Clippers game was like you were holding your breath, in those early years, just waiting for a breakaway. So he's the vibes associated pick, but Chris Paul is just like, he was the best player on that team. The fourth one was hard because I was just going to pick from that era again, from the Lob City era. JJ Redick wasn't there for as long as you think he was. And then after I kind of settled on that, it just had to be Jamal Crawford, won a couple 6 Man of the Years. And the image of him just coming off the bench, because Doc Rivers always did like the 5 in, 5 out subs, and Crawford would just come in and cook for 6 minutes and not pass. And it's just like that's the other enduring image of those Clippers teams, is when all the starters sat, Crawford would come in and just get you 16 points. So that was the last spot, but I'm open to debate on that one.
Did you give any sort of consideration to Ivica Zubac?
If he had like 2 more years as good as last season, and maybe the Clippers advanced a little farther, I would have thought about it. But then it's like, well, if that's happening, then either Leonard or like James Harden is also having more good years. And which is to say, I didn't think very hard about Leonard or Harden. It just not long enough, not healthy enough, not enough like high end success for me.
I just was interested. Zubac is 7th all time in Clippers win shares. I know the bar is of course low, like after Paul.
Well, and he's
Jordan,
5th.
Brand, and
he's
Griffin.
5th in the date cutoff that we're using too. So like certainly, if you're just going by the numbers, he's your honorable mention guy.
I think you got it right, just because it's hard to find that like 4th player who's just associated with the Clippers. Yeah, I don't even know who that. I guess it would be Zubac would be my pick, but you mentioned Redick is kind of associated with that era. It's kind of it's kind of process of elimination like you did with certain title teams, except this just wasn't a title team. You're just doing it by that era.
So I'll start with, I did not include LeBron James on the Lakers Mount Rushmore.
I am outraged.
Here's the thing. This team has a lot of rings, and LeBron got him one, and that's more than several other teams we're going to talk about. But I just like everybody here that got multiple and mattered a lot in those. Like, and LeBron's been there a long time. There's absolutely a case for LeBron. He's gonna make two others, so he's good. Kobe, no question, no doubt. One of those rings I think counts before. I think that was like the 99-2000 season, so that doesn't factor in here. Oh well, he still has 4. Shaq was the best player on the first three-peat, and so we're gonna throw him up there. Pau Gasol was the key running mate on the last 2 Lakers titles with Kobe. The numbers are like good enough. He 17.7 points, 9.9 boards, 3.5 assists, 1.4 blocks from 8 to 14 for Pau. Nobody else in the league we're cherry picking, admitted. Nobody else in the league averaged those numbers from during that stretch of the season. So Pau, grossly underrated historically, was an awesome, like overqualified second option on a title team. Derek Fisher's the last one. No case like in terms of star quality or like individual accolades, but he's just there for all the titles. And he starts on all the title teams and is a big leader. I want to get it right. I don't have the stat in front of me, but like games, minutes, like all that stuff, he's way up there for this century. And in terms of, he doesn't have a case otherwise. So like if you want Anthony Davis, if you want Lamar Odom, Godspeed. But I'm going with the guy that was there for 5 titles, 4 of which actually count in the sample we're considering.
I think I could argue this one, and I think I'm about to. Just like, first of all, has it kind of set it in on you that there's a chance, I don't know if it's going to happen next season or the season after, but LeBron might spend more consecutive years with the Lakers than any other team in his career? Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah. It doesn't feel right. It feels like that can't be possible.
But like, only 1 title, but he's also second during this period in points, in assists. I think he's like top 3 in steals or blocks or whatever it might be. I would have a tough time leaving that off in favor of someone in Derek Fisher who I view as more of a glue guy, but I get the ring count, not to boil it down to rings.
Yeah.
I get it, but it's also because LeBron, to me, he's no worse than the second greatest player of all time. He's probably my GOAT. He spent, like, we're not still in LeBron's prime. We've seen better years from LeBron. I just don't know how you leave. He keeps coming up and all. It really comes down to you for spent more time there, wins rings, and I'm not even diminishing that because that's a really strong case. It just feels so weird not having LeBron James on this list.
You made me think of another criteria that I should have mentioned at the top, and that is like, I'm trying to think of it from a fan perspective in some sense, in that like, who is beloved? You know, like who among fans, like, just like is beloved, is like an iconic player, is like someone that, you know, they associate with like the best times, and like, you know, like who's kind of legendary. And like, I know, like some of the Lakers fans I know, like sort of don't acknowledge, like LeBron's not their guy. They're like, I'm a Kobe guy. I love the Lakers. LeBron is just sort of here. I don't feel like LeBron has that same appeal to like diehard Lakers fans. I'm sure they're happy to have him and have been glad that he's been there for as long as he has. But you know what I mean? I think Fisher is like, when you're sitting there, like, God, you remember the good, like, oh, he was, you know, like having that fan conversation. I do think Fisher holds a different type of place in Lakers fans' minds and hearts than LeBron does. Maybe that's not fair to LeBron, but that was a factor and will continue to be in some of my picks.
I think the timing of you doing this is probably perfect because the sentiment on LeBron might be lower now that Luka is there, so people might have an easier time dismissing. And the other thing, I don't assign value to this because I think winning a championship under any circumstance in any season is hard. I wonder how much, whether it's Lakers fans or certainly other just general fans of the NBA, other teams' fans, are going to ding him to say, well, he won the bubble championship. That's not a real championship. I think that is just one of the all-time dumbest arguments that have ever been made in the NBA sphere. But I don't have a huge issue with this. It's just weird to not have LeBron there when he's actually been with the Lakers for very, like, the better part of a decade now.
I don't know, make people like you more or win more championships. What can I tell you? Oh, another team that gives us a chance to just celebrate a bygone era. I kind of Clippers this, where I just like, what era of Memphis Grizzlies basketball did fans love the most? And it's like unquestionably grit and grind. So Marc Gasol, easy pick, defensive player of the year. Mike Conley, just the steady starting point guard of all time, was great for them. 0 technical fouls. And then you have Zach Randolph and Tony Allen. First team all defense, Tony Allen. Zach Randolph, just the meanest right shoulder, has no moves, but was incredible. The two mean guys in between Gasol and Conley. Like, Allen is the guy, I think statistically, you'd say, like, I don't know about that. But so if you take him off, you have to think about Pau Gasol. But he predates this and is like actually the way that they get Marc Gasol. So like that's, I don't know what you do with that. And I gave him the Lakers Rushmore, so I felt like he wouldn't be too slighted there. Do you think Memphis fans are like, this is the 4, or is there somebody else that, like, is it Battier? Is it like Mike Miller?
I thought about Battier and Miller. I also just wondered if this is a combination of vibes and just electricity. Ja Morant is probably going to make some of because he's the one that kind of made the the grit and grind Grizzlies were not this national draw. You had to be a real sicko to want to watch that Grizzlies team. Nobody wanted to play them. Let me be clear. They were respected as hell throughout the league. And so that's why I kind of thought about Ja Morant. I think these are the right picks because if you're going to if you're going to go with vibes, like, then it's Tony Allen for sure. But if you're saying, no, there needs to be a stronger statistical case and Ja Morant's peak was certainly higher, he's an all NBA type player, I think that's probably the pick you have to, because what is it going to be, Rudy Gay? I mean,
right.
Because if you go Rudy Gay, Shane Battier, or Mike Miller over Tony Allen, doesn't that just get all kinds of weird?
Well, and also, like, what do you think about the idea that if we had done this 2 full years ago, I think Morant's chances would have been better? Because the last 2 years have not been favorable for him, I think. But I do take your point that, like, we talked to Keith Parrish for the look ahead maybe last year, and I think he made the point that, like, Ja Morant is the single most celebrated Memphis athlete, like, ever. He's just, like, his popularity is, like, impossible to overstate. I wonder if that's still true to the same degree. But I do think if we'd done this in 2023 or 2022, Morant probably would have fared better.
Yeah, I'd like to know, Grizzlies fans, let us know in the comments down there to see who you would have picked as the Mount Rushmore, because it does feel like there are 3 unassailable locks here. Like, if you don't have, I guess you could argue Mike Conley not getting a technical, is that just evidence of a lack of passion?
He doesn't
care enough? Who cares less, Mike Conley or Nikola Jokic, about winning basketball games? Hard to say. Right? So I think those 3 are clear locks, just Zebo, Conley, and Gasol. You could probably quibble over Allen, but it has to be, I know I just asked you this, but we didn't really settle on an answer. It has to be Ja if it's not Allen to me, because Allen would be the symbol of what, like, more so than a Battier, than a Miller. So if you're going with someone who isn't him, it should be just the bigger name, the glitzier face.
Yep, I agree with that.
We are on to the Miami Heat Mount Rushmore since 2000. This was actually kind of hard. LeBron and D-Wade are just in. The D-Wade's just the best Heat player in franchise history. Done. LeBron, only there for 4 years. Guess what? They made the finals every single year. 2 MVPs. This is where it gets tough. I went with Jimmy Butler because he did lead them to multiple finals. Postseason Jimmy, too. I think people forget. Like, he became the stuff. Like, it's almost mythic, except that it's true because of how he would ratchet it up in the playoffs. Udonis Haslem would be the vibes pick, the symbolic pick, there forever. But, like, Bam Adebayo's just better. And the fact that he's been a perennial defensive player of the year contender, just hasn't gotten there yet, I certainly think that it doesn't need to be him. But I think I just feel like what he's done is too hard for Shaq to overcome in that smaller window. And then Udonis Haslem to overcome is, okay, you lead the franchise in rebounds all time or whatever it is. But, like, was your peak sort of anywhere near Bam's? And already with Bam, he ranks no lower than 4th in franchise history, so not even just since 2000, in total minutes, which he's 3rd, points, which is 2nd, rebounds 2nd, assists 2nd, steals 3rd, and blocks 4th. I think that's, like, a pretty big deal.
I think I would have gone Bosch. I mean, I get it. Like, the statistical case is there. I think I would default to, and he's beloved too. Adebayo is. I think Jimmy has to be there. But I think if I had to make the tough decision, I would take 3 Heatles and then leave Jimmy as opposed to 2 and then have Bam on there. But like, that's a tough call. I don't envy you having to make that. I think if push came to shove, I'd have Bosh over Bam, but it would be like, that's a really tough one. I think your other three is a no-note situation.
Let me clarify what I said on Bam. I meant in his ranks for the franchise since 2000, not all time, because then you get into Alonzo. I think I misspoke there, but yeah, that's Bosh. I thought about him too. I thought about Shaq. I forgot that I know he won a title, but like I forgot that Shaq was still an All-NBA player for some of his time in Miami. That didn't register.
But not quite the same though, right?
No.
And like Wade is the guy you associate with that title to me. So actually, really, Wade is one with a bullet. Like, you know what I mean? He's ahead of LeBron to me by far.
So it feels like there might be 6 or 7 guys that you could make real cases for here.
Yeah.
So you have these 4, and then you have Udonis Haslem, you have Bosh, and then whether you wanted to talk about Shaq or not.
I mean, does Ray Allen get a mention because he hit one of the biggest shots in NBA history, which Bosh tipped out, right?
Right. Oh, man. I'm like I almost feel like, so would it be wrong for me to pick if I was to bounce one of them and I said, hey, Grant, you can choose the 4th one, but I get to pick who leaves? I might bounce Jimmy. Is that dumb?
You can't bounce Jimmy and keep Bam because Jimmy was the best player on teams that overlapped with Bam. I mean, like in terms of just
Bam pilled. Apparently,
you are.
So.
It's a good pill to be pilled by. He's a great. We love Bam. He's a great player. I think Jimmy was better, at least in terms of like lifting the team in a playoff setting, which is just going to be what his legacy is. I mean, this was a hard one. I think it's Bosh for me. But Bam has the numbers. Like, I think Bosh was a 3rd option. Bam has never been less than 2. So
you only would have subbed in Bosh for Bam. You wouldn't have made any other edits to it.
No, I think Jimmy, LeBron, and Wade they have to stay.
The Milwaukee Bucks. So I mean, I think that you could pencil in the title team if you want. Yep. But Giannis is I think Giannis is probably going to go down as the best franchise player in history. That's a debate to be had with Kareem, but he's in here, no notes. Brook Lopez just turning into, I know this isn't necessarily part of it, but just turning into a defensive player of the year candidate once he came to Milwaukee. He was hitting threes. Insane. Chris Middleton, the 2-man game with Giannis, the 2nd most important player, or no worse than 3rd, depending on how you felt about Lopez. Those 3 they were the most important players to a title team. I struggled whether do I just go with Drew Holiday and like complete these dudes won a championship together, but Michael Redd has the longevity bump there. That guy could really shoot, really score, spent a ton of time there, so he has, again, that tenure. He was there between 2000 and 2011. He scored more points in a Bucks jersey during this time than all but he scored more points in a Bucks jersey than all but 5 other players all time. And he's made more threes with the Bucks than anyone except Ray Allen and Chris Middleton. So I think he had just enough credentials, but I would certainly listen to if people said, hey, if they come in with, like, I don't know, I guess Ray Allen would be another option, or Andrew Bogut. You think Ray Allen?
Yeah, to me it's between, I think the Giannis, Lopez, and Middleton are unassailable, and then just because of the championship and Giannis is like, what are we talking about? Allen had 3 All-Star games as a Buck. Red had 1. Allen got MVP votes. Red didn't. Allen, I think, I'm almost certain it was in the 2000s. It might have been like 02 or 03. He was the best player on a Bucks team that did make the conference finals, I want to say. The team that had Glenn Robinson and Sam Cassell. So I would give Allen the nod here, but that's the problem with Allen is like we just talked about him. We talked about him for the Celtics in passing. We talked about him in the Heat for the Heat in passing. He's not going to make the Oklahoma City team, but like for his Sonics years, I think you at least mentioned him. So it's like he's just all over the map, and it's almost like if Allen had 7 or 8 years with the Bucks at that level, then he's in, but he doesn't. So I can see why you went with Red. I would go Allen over Red though. He
only had 2.5 seasons that fall into this era, which is what was tough for me.
Yeah,
so, like,
he's got some 90s. 90, into the league in 96. So you're right about that. But as All-Star, only 2 All-Star seasons count. You're right. Yeah, it's tough. I could see it makes it a lot closer for sure. I have Minnesota. Kevin Garnett, obviously, even though some of that's in the 90s, he's still the, like, before this current era of Wolves' success, it was just like 04. It was the season you always pointed to. Garnett was an MVP type player back then, just one of the best defenders of all time, just was surrounded by not very much talent in a brutal West, and he was just ridiculous. It gets harder after that. I did put Anthony Edwards on here just because he's been the key to the only other good version of the Wolves we've seen in 25 years. It's weird to put someone on here whose like career arrow is still pointing up. But he's the best player on the other best Wolves teams, so it has to be him. That's also kind of the case for Cat, who does make it. He was there for a really, really long time, and just the counting stats are stupid, and the All-Star games, and like the statistical case is strong enough that I had to put him there, even though, I don't know, he feels like someone that there are a lot of people who are like, who's actually not good is Cat, and I can't quite get there, but we're talking about the Wolves, so it's slim pickings. Lastly, Kevin Love. The team was bad with him there for almost all the time, all of his tenure. This could be Ricky Rubio, and I think if I were being totally consistent and going with like who did they fall in love with most, it's probably Rubio for that era of Wolves basketball, which was again not good.
Wait, you think Rubio was more beloved than Cat?
I think Rubio is one of the most like niche beloved players on any team for this century. Like because it was so sad. Like the whole narrative, like he's 17 and playing for Spain, and we got this guy, and now the ACL happens, and it's like everyone felt bad for him. He seems like such a good dude. Like we were talking off air before this the other day, and it's like the change your face meme where he's just like just being a sweet guy. Like I think people love Rubio in Minnesota. Or if maybe I'm projecting, I would have loved Rubio in Minnesota. I loved him from outside Minnesota.
You didn't love him enough.
Couldn't love him enough. Had to go with some of the numbers. I mean, Kevin Love's statistical case is like he just had absurd production while he was there. He's third in win shares behind Cat and KG for the century.
He was the modern day guy who kind of hollowed out the meaning of double doubles, I think, for everybody. Where it's like, oh, there's Kevin Love with like his 900th straight double double in Minnesota again.
Didn't he have a 30 rebound? Or it's like he had a 30-20 or something?
Yeah, the 2020 games just became like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
like Kevin Love.
Right.
Did it
Then
again.
Domantas Sabonis averaged that for a couple of years. Any notes? Wally Zerbiak, should he have been here?
What about Pooh Richardson?
You're right.
Third all-time in assists. Come on. I think this is right. I don't know. Rubio would have had to have been the fifth, and after that, like Cassell had a mini tenure here during this time. I don't think Wolves fans would pick Steph Marbury there at all.
I mean, he barely gets into the 2000s too, is the other problem.
Now, do you think any of the other? I think Anthony Edwards is the right pick, by the way. Do you think any of the other, does Rudy Gobert have a chance of making this now, or if we did this, in a year or two?
Well, it would depend, right? I think he could, if the Wolves had a ton of team success, it would only solidify Edwards' case, and then you might have to take a second guy, right? And at that point, maybe it's Gobert over Cat, because Gobert will have been there and mattered longer in their successful phase than Cat will have. Or maybe Love gets the bump too, and you just have three guys from the relatively modern Wolves, which would feel weird. But would it? Because they've never been this consistently good.
Consecutive conference finals, that's a franchise first. I mean,
that is an apex for them.
Yeah,
no question.
No Nikola Pekovic or some Al Jefferson, Pekovic. Minnesota years.
That's one of the best parts of this exercise is I haven't thought about Pekovic for a good 4 years.
Just a massive human being. Massive
Harrison Barnes' greatest dunk of his career was just all over him. You remember that one?
I don't. Not even a little bit.
Oh, look it up.
Describe it to me in grave detail, please.
So here he comes down. No, we don't have to. Okay, this one was terrible. I hated doing this. It's the New Orleans Pelicans, which is also the New Orleans Oklahoma City Hornets, which is how Chris Paul gets here. What do you want? This is where he started his career. He was only there from 05-06 to 10-11. He's still the franchise leader in win shares. Led the league in assists twice. Steals 3 times. Rookie of the year. 3 All-NBA.
How many times did he win Rookie of the Year?
Well, they thought about giving it to him twice, but they said that doesn't make any sense. We'll give it to him once. All-NBA. What else did I say? Oh, he was second in MVP voting in 07-08. That's pretty good. There's only one way you can be better. So he's here, even though he also made the Clippers, and we've thought about him for some others. I also put David West just because he was the running mate on what were some relatively successful Hornets teams. A couple All-Star games for him, averaged 16 and 7. Anthony Davis makes it, again, not a ton of team success, but just behind Paul in win shares for the franchise since 2000. 3 All-NBA teams, only played 7 seasons, but that's enough. The last pick, I hate it. I went with Zion. He's had no team success. He's missed a ton of time. I just wasn't going to put PJ Brown or Drew Holiday ahead of him, and those are the only two other guys with more win shares.
I honestly wonder if Pelicans fans, like if you're looking for someone who defines the franchise and
that's my argument. It's like he's the era-defining player for going on 6 years now, for better or worse. And it's not. So were you going to make the Holiday case? Because I think
I honestly wonder if you polled Pelicans fans and gave them truth serum, I feel like they would pick Drew Holiday.
He's certainly he's more likable, right? In terms from a
you talk about
fan's
Ricky
perspective.
Rubio being beloved. Drew Holiday's been beloved wherever he goes.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't associate him with the Pelicans. Do you? I guess you sort of should, because it's not
that I don't. Who do I associate him with? Probably the Sixers, and then he won titles with the Bucks and the Celtics, so they're gonna pop up first. But he was in New Orleans for like a half decade,
right? Yeah, guarding Kevin Durant and every other 6'10" guy that nobody else on that team could guard.
Sorry, 1 second. I have Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver. They would like Derek Queen on this list. Great.
You've never done a bit where you pick up your phone and pretend to answer it. We've potted for a long time. You actually had me for a second. I was like, what? This must be important.
And it only came to me like 30 seconds ago. I thought it's cheesy, it's corny, but shout out to
do
whatever.
it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, because I hate the Zion pick. I think maybe it should just be Holiday. I'll stick with it just because, Zion is when we've talked about New Orleans, since he's been there has never been another item one on the discussion list other than Zion. And so that I think factored in. Again, I'm being inconsistent because I'm going against the whole who do fans love? Who's deep in there? Who are they naming their pets after? It's not Zion.
Well, no, I think by the way, I think it's fair. I might have gone with Drew, but maybe from a fan perspective, Zion is the more likely answer. I think if you think about what we talked about with the Hornets, another team where this was not the best exercise, and at least the Pelicans have Chris Paul and Anthony Davis to hang their hats on. When have we talked about anyone else aside from of the other options of if he's healthy, he's just a top 10 player. And so it's the same thing with LaMelo Ball, where we've never talked about him at that peak, but it's who on the Hornets could be an all-NBA player during it's LaMelo Ball. That is Zion, and we all kind of just recognize that if Zion were ever to stay healthy, the Pelicans, probably not this season's Pelicans if we're being honest, but the Pelicans are just going to be dangerous. So I totally get where you're coming from with the pick. This was not fun for me, Grant. The New York Knicks is Mount Rushmore since 2000. Carmelo Anthony's on it. He scored more points. He's over 10K during this span than anyone else. I don't know who needs to hear this, but Jalen Brunson is probably on the New York Knicks' all-time Mount Rushmore at this point. When you just look at what he's been able to do in the playoffs, brought the team to their first conference final since 2000. You can make, if you're going for, the members of the title teams, I get that. But he's certainly on this list. There is no debate there. Now, this is where it just gets all sorts of maybe not fun. But I would like to recognize Julius Randle made 2 All-NBA teams and won Most Improved Player with the Knicks. Whatever you think about Julius Randle as a flawed player, whatever you think about his postseason performances, the Knicks since 2000 have been complete and utter, by and large, absolute ass. Julius Randle was a really good player that helped put them on a trajectory where they got a player like Jalen Brunson, and that wound up making all the difference. But then after this, it gets even tougher for me. I went with Allen Houston. This was not his peak. He was on the team that made the conference finals in 2000. He dealt with some injuries towards the tail end. But you know what? He played enough to score a bunch. I think during this stretch, he was still third in points scored or whatever it is, fifth, in the top 5 there. So I went with him. I think you could easily go with David Lee, even Jamal Crawford, Kurt Thomas, maybe Amari Stoudemire. Are there any other names that you would be thinking about here? This was, as someone who's been a lifelong Knicks fan, this exercise was decidedly not fun for me. So.
Yeah. Tyson Chandler, just because he was on some of the good Melo teams, but you're not putting him on there over.
Do we
Houston
pour one out
Randle.
for the amnesty of Chauncey Billups? Should I put him on here?
Did Baron Davis did play for a second for them, I think.
Yeah, nowhere near his prime. But let me put T-Mac on here too.
He was
Jared Jeffries.
Oh my God, that's right. They had T-Mac. It's wild to me that second and third in win shares for the Knicks during this stretch. Did you look, or will you be surprised?
Yes, when I saw Mitchell Robinson.
David Lee is 2. David Lee.
Oh, he's 2. That doesn't shock me at all. Just with the rebounds, he made an all-star team.
Yeah,
with them,
he's a stat stuffer for sure. But Mitchell Robinson, it feels like how could he possibly have played enough to?
He honestly should make this list just because it's that mind melting that he's there.
Yeah. It's really weird. I think Houston, I really bumped on Houston at first because I was like, oh, he wasn't any good after 2000. But yeah, he did have an all-star season, and he just was still one of the best shooters in the league. So I think he's right.
Do you think that in terms of if there was an award to be given out for most likely to die for their franchise, I feel like Josh Hart would probably win it. So, like, could that have given him, like, some consideration here? I just don't. This was because the Knicks of those, I made a joke before, but, like, it was true. Like, after 2000, like, it got really rough to, like, kind of the prime Julius Randle years for the Knicks. So, I think this is the right four, but I think there are at least 3 locks here. I would be curious to know what Knicks fans want as I'm sure everyone has their opinion, but who they would want as the 4th, or if maybe some people would leave off Randle altogether.
Yeah, I think, there's plenty of space for Eddie Curry to fit in here if someone wants to get creative. We move to the Thunder. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. Okay, any arguments? I don't know.
Hold
MVPs.
on.
Never won a title. Never won a title. MVPs, all NBAs, all stars, just defining guys on a team that everybody, us included, I think everybody was like, this 2012 Thunder gonna win.
They'll be back. That's what we all
four and a half titles over the next decade. Is that the over under? Never got there. Did exclude Harden, just not long enough there, and he got plenty of love with the Rockets. SGA is the only guy to lead the Thunder to a title, so that's gonna cover that. Didn't get any Sonics on here. Ray Allen would have been a thought, I think, if we were going that way. Lewis? But sure, Rashard Lewis. Let's see, Flip Murray. Who else was on there? Jerome James.
Eric Maynor?
Jim McIlvain. So the 4th one is the vibes pick that we've been alluding to for pretty much this whole thing. It's Nick Collison. He does not belong on this list in terms of a quality of basketball player. 910 games. Number 1 by a mile for the Thunder in the century. Kept getting 1-year deals. Seems to matter a ton. He is the Udonis Haslem figure. He is kind of the just Dwight Powell. He's been there forever. Never played for any other team. Was with Durant in Seattle and still, endured. So also a couple other guys I thought about. Serge Ibaka, you might give some consideration to. Harden, obviously. Steven Adams. Just for reference, Collison played more games for the Thunder than Adams and Ibaka combined. So in terms of just cumulative impact, he's just the guy. He's been there for 1,000 years, and I like the idea of him up there with 3 other MVPs. And it's just like, is that Nick Collison? When people are looking at the mountain.
Where's Paul George land on this? He's the reason they have Shea. No?
3rd place in MVP. I mean, he was not a strong consideration, but I like that you mentioned him.
It's interesting because I think the only player that you could conceivably bounce is Nick Collison, but I don't see a compelling case for anyone else to put. Like James Harden, I guess, I don't know. He wasn't James Harden for his first 4 years. He was the 6th man of the year, but
the best Thunder teams with Durant and Westbrook didn't have Harden, in terms of team success. You could go you want to do Gary Payton? Did he have enough good years in the 2000s? I don't think so.
2.5, 3.5.
Yeah, he wasn't. There wasn't enough there.
If we were gonna venture outside of players, Sam Presti just belongs on here, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good one.
The Orlando Magic. This one actually felt pretty cut and dry for me. I mean, Dwight Howard spent all of his 8 years with Orlando basically as the NBA's most formidable big man. He had 3 DPOYs. That trails only Rudy Gobert, Dikembe Mutombo, and Ben Wallace all time. And he finished in the top 5 of the MVP voting 4 times. And he remains the Magic's all-time leader in points, rebounds, and blocks. Prime Dwight was a hashtag problem. T-Mac's time in Orlando, maybe a little divisive. It was brief, didn't feature any playoff success. That's kind of the story of T-Mac's career, though. But he still got All-NBA honors in all 4 of his seasons there. And that includes joining Howard as the sole players in franchise history with multiple first-team nods. I think that's a pretty big deal. Nobody has played more Magic games since 2000, Grant, than Jameer Nelson. He is just he's kind of what Udonis Haslem is to Miami, except he actually played a lot more. He has an all-star berth under his belt. He's the Magic's all-time leader in assists and ranks in the top 5 of total points and steals. And then I think the 4th spot is where it could get a little interesting. But Vooch, I feel is the face most synonymous with those late 2010s Magic. They're the only other T-Mac and Howard are the only other players with multiple all-star games in a Magic jersey. and then Vooch ranks 5th or better in basically every single Magic counting stat during this span. I think I would listen to arguments for a couple other guys. Maybe you have a Hedu Turkoglu on there.
Yeah.
I don't like a Rashard Lewis, JJ Redick. I don't like Aaron Gordon. I just don't. It doesn't feel like this felt like when I put these 4 down, I was like, no, this is right. Maybe it's not inarguable, but who would be like the 5th guy that you would consider?
Yeah, I think, well, it kind of depends the direction you want to go. Aaron Gordon, I don't think was there long enough to, like, if you're going to bump Vooch off. I'm not bumping McGrady, but 2 scoring titles, by the way, for McGrady. 32 a game in one of those years. Nelson, Howard, McGrady are not debatable. Gordon, not as long of a tenure, probably didn't quite reach the highs Vooch did. You'd have to pull from like other players on the Howard Nelson teams, like Rashard Lewis, Turkoglu, JJ Redick, like, and I don't think any of those 3, just to stick with them, quite get to the level of bumping Vucevic. Even though, like, I guess it depends if you're talking team success and like which actual like team, which stint in the franchise's history this century mattered the most. How much do you want to honor that? But just like Vooch's numbers are what they are. Like he was just super productive in ways those guys weren't.
I will say I wish that Grant Hill could just be put on this list.
Yeah. I mean, again, to do the coach thing, you might just Stan Van Gundy might get consideration if that were fair, because he was like 4 out was not a thing we talked about until he did it with the Magic.
Other thing about Vooch too is he is the reason that the current Magic have Franz Wagner. So there's that going for him as well. Oh, this was, you think of the Sixers and you maybe don't think it's going to be as rough as this was, but Grant, this was pretty rough. Joel Embiid to me is Allen Iverson and Joel Embiid are the locks. They won MVPs in a Sixers uniform. Like we don't need to get into all of that. Andre Iguodala was probably never in the hashtag right role during his time with the Sixers, but he did make the 2009 All-Star appearance. He had an all-defense selection, and he's in the top 5 spots for basically all the major stat categories, including leading the team in assists since 2000. I did not know where to go with number 4. I'm not going to lie. I thought about consulting like some people that we know with the Sixers that might want to pick this one. I thought about Ben Simmons. I thought about Lou Williams. I thought about Tyrese Maxey, Drew Holiday. I thought about Robert Covington, James Harden, and just more. I settled on Thaddeus Young. He's the guy where if you want to cherry pick stats, and there's even a graphic for it during his time with the Pacers, and he'll just pop up alongside some ridiculously fun names, Hall of Fame names. So it's just like, it's not even a vibes pick. It's just I was unswayed, unmoved by all the alternatives here.
I mean, I just can't believe you forgot about Matt Geiger. Does that early 2000s title run mean nothing? That's where
Tobias
I would go.
Harris might have gotten me like threats in the comment section had I picked him, right?
I feel like people really loved Eric Snow next to Iverson.
Aaron McKee,
Sam
Evan
Dallenberg.
Turner.
Ben Simmons is, if you're going with like who's like a defining figure, I think Simmons' case gets a lot stronger. But like everybody in Philly just can't stand him, so you would just there's no scenario where he gets a monument. Right?
Like if you were throwing vibes completely out of the equation, where it's, even when you make a vibes pick, your other picks are, well, this person isn't a franchise pariah for the most part. Like, you know what I mean? So just picking Ben Simmons would have been like the antithesis of this exercise, I think.
Yeah. I mean, well, Sam Hinkie would probably belong if we're talking about like defining figures, or like
Nerlens Noel, we throw him on here. Jaleel Okafor,
all the failed process picks that just didn't work out.
Honestly, KJ McDaniel's permanent stat darling in my heart. Let's throw him on here.
And like a whole series of like that type of contract happened after the Sixers did the weird.
Do you think that he was the way when he played in the Sixers? It's so small that window's in here. Should I have just gone with Dikembe Mutombo and picked the name? In that case?
Well, he's got like 5 teams that you could put him. I mean, I guess some of that was the 90s, but yeah, I don't think you get there. Well, was he on that title team? Not title finals team? I'm embarrassed.
I think he might have been. I'll double check that now. But I looked and it was just he didn't spend enough time there. And I think he came in when they made the finals, he was there. Like he was acquired in the middle of the year, right? Yeah, he was acquired in the middle of 2000, 2001. There you go. Then spent all of 2001, 2002, and then that was it.
That's it. Yeah, probably not. I think Thad Young is he's a Sixer to me. So criteria 1 satisfied. I think of him first as a Sixer, and then the other options are just so bad that Simmons is the only one where it's like in terms of importance to the franchise, he weirdly is up there. for
He's
wrong
third.
reasons.
Thad is third in total games played since 2000
Yeah.
for the Sixers, and fourth in scoring, and he's just not even known as a scorer. So,
Yeah. Phoenix Suns, easy one actually. I took 3 from 7 seconds or less. So you got Steve Nash, 2 MVPs, the catalyst for what at the time was like an unthinkably good NBA offense. Amari Stoudemire, Sean Marion, like they sort of have to be there. They were the 2 best players alongside Nash for the best years of that stretch, which still, unless, well, the most recent like finals team gave me some pause, but Devin Booker is here just because he's like the lifer son. He's the franchise's all-time leading scorer, which is like, that can't be right, but it is. And that gets you 1 from those really good Chris Paul, Bridges, Ayton, Booker teams. Because he's still there. 2, he's probably the best player on those teams. Paul was.
who did you want to put over Booker? Did you mention
excellent.
that and I just didn't hear?
No, that's just like the first 3 were locks from the 7 seconds or less era, and then it had to be somebody else. And I don't know who you realistically consider other than Booker. I was just kind of vamping to justify him, but like this is probably my easiest set of 4. I think that.
What about like Dragan Bender?
Yeah, it was him. Goran and Zoran Dragic would share one. They would share a bust, I think.
I guess.
And then
could you like really stretch it and try and make a case for Boris Diaw or
if you
Joe
wanted
Johnson?
one more
Was he here enough?
I think Diaw would have been the one if I were going to just eliminate anything outside of like 04 to 09. But I think Booker's case is pretty strong.
No Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant here. Nothing? No?
Beal, Durant, Booker, and Ryan Dunn.
Do we just put Matt Ishbia here, maybe?
All right. Slightly more controversial, probably. The first 2 are easy for the Portland Trail Blazers. That's who we're talking about. Dame Lillard, LaMarcus Aldridge. Dame is like in a category by himself. He's on the franchise's all-time Mount Rushmore. Like if you're picking one guy, it's him or Clyde Drexler. Or if you go way back, Bill Walton, but just not a long enough prime there. Aldridge was just the second best player on the best stretch of Blazers teams next to Dame. Just like Aldridge is definitely one of those guys you forget. 19-8 for 9 years, and he had a 10th place and a 7th place MVP finish in his last 2 seasons with the team. So just like
7th? I didn't know he finished that high. Wow.
Wild, right? I had to double check that. CJ McCollum falls into the same boat, I guess. Like never an all-star, but 19 a game, shot just under 40% from 3 for a really long time. I think it had to be guys from this era. I did exclude, and not like for any reason other than just like not long enough, some of the early 2000s Blazers teams where it's like Jermaine O'Neal's there and I don't know, Scottie Pippen and Bonzi Wells and Sheed and like Zach Randolph's there for a minute. It was just such a revolving door. I mean, there was a conference finalist there. So like if Dame hadn't made one of those, I think maybe this gets a little trickier. The last guy, Brandon Roy, was incredible until he wasn't. It was a good time, not a long time. Just 4 healthy-ish seasons. Rookie of the year, 3 All-Stars, 2 All-NBA. And the capper for me is like, if there's a Blazers moment that doesn't involve Dame this century and isn't the Shaq finishing a Kobe-fed lob in the conference finals against them, it's Roy's fourth quarter against Dallas. Like he just... Like it was a postseason. He was kind of not like himself anymore at that point too. And he just goes for 23 in the 4. I think it was 23 or they come back from 23 and he just can't miss from anywhere. Just like an electrifying, like, oh my God, to happen to him too, who had already had injury issues and was like, I don't know if this guy's going to have anything close to the kind of career it looked like. It was just like I don't know. It was a had to be there thing maybe, but I'll never forget like the emotion of that fourth quarter for him. So he makes it sentimentally, I think.
I only have 3 notes on your 4 picks. I think Bill Walton should have made it anyway because Bill Walton is forever.
Sure. Out of there by like 1979, but still.
I have Young Handsome on this list already too.
Yes.
I think he just belongs there. But for real, my actual real note, I think these might be the right 4. If you were going to bounce somebody, I think it would have to be CJ for Zach Randolph. Does that make is that did you give any consideration to Zebo?
If anybody's going, it's CJ. Randolph.
He had some gnarly seasons with the Blazers, and I say that unironically.
I don't think those teams were good. And like the fact that he's so associated with the Grizzlies, I think was part of it for me.
He also played a total of 8 playoff games with the Blazers, being there.
The teams weren't good.
Right.
You could like, there's a robust list of like, you could go. Nick Batum was there for a lot of the Dame
Batum for sure.
Aldridge years. Like even Wes Matthews was really good before the Achilles. McCollum is like it's a longevity thing. I think it was almost a decade, and he was just great. He was very good every year. You know.
I think that's certainly if you go with the emotional component too, factoring that in addition to the performance and team success, it would be him. I think Zebo's the only other guy. Batum might sway me. I remember being gutted. Remember when he like ended up on the Hornets? I was how the Blazers supposed. So there was the Wes Matthews towards Achilles, and that entire team basically broke up. Right.
That offseason, the team. Well, should we just split one of the spots and give it to Al Farouk Aminu and Mo Harkless because those were just the combo forwards? It's like, oh, you got to get 2 guys like that between Dame and Aldridge. Here we go. Okay, another pretty easy one actually for me. I'd be surprised if you have any notes on this.
Can I'd like to interject.
Yes.
Having Grant do the Mount Rushmore since 2000 for the Sacramento Kings is honestly torturous for Sacramento Kings fans. They catch nothing but strays from you all day long, sir.
I want to meet the Kings fan that disagrees with these 4 picks. I see maybe there's room on one of them, but it's the Kings again. I feel like did I get all these teams? I guess you got the Knicks, but it's like there's been a tiny pocket of success this century.
Honestly, I'm just impressed you didn't put like Carl Landry on here or something to be a troll.
Yeah, Carl Landry, Rajon Rondo, Vince Carter,
Zach Randolph.
Yeah, Zach Randolph again. Absolutely. So I'm just honoring the only time this team was sustainably good, and it was a very early part of the century. Everybody remembers I ran into the Lakers in a highly controversial conference finals. I think that Kings team is one of the better teams, full stop, to not win a title in this stretch we're talking about. But it's Mike Bibby, it's Peja Stojakovic, it's Chris Webber, and it's Vlade Divac. Doug Christie is the guy being left out. He was like the defensive 2 that would make the occasional 3 on that team. But like these 4 guys to me are like the Kings players of the century. Webber's the headliner, multiple All-NBA nods. He was the 2010 guy, also one of the best passing bigs in the league, like basically for his whole career. Him and Divac. Divac is the one where it's like, really? Because the numbers weren't all there. But I think the way that he played specifically, and combined with like what Rick Adelman did with those teams offensively, are like why those Kings teams were successful. The handoff games at the elbows, the like ball movements. I mean, it's weird that the Kings with Sabonis have had success with the hand. Like maybe they just need a handoff big. That's how you win.
Marvin Bagley, does that work for you? Divac also responsible for that.
That didn't work. Maybe Divac gets demerits for some of the drafting he did while in charge of personnel decisions, but I think he like from a culture and like a just how does this team play standpoint, I think Divac has to be here because he felt like a defining figure for me. So that's the 4. I mean, I don't know if you do just have to go into like less successful later teams and just find the best player for alternatives like Sabonis, Brad Miller. Everybody forgets like post Divac, Brad Miller had some very good years with the Kings, but no team success. Didn't pull from the sort of quote unquote modern era where you could have like, it's just like every guy you'd think like DeMarcus Cousins. Like it's just
that's the one statistically you could look at and say, maybe. Like I'm not even saying he'd be my 5th pick, but that's where the numbers just don't line up with the reputation with the Kings.
That's it. Like the spread, if we did this just with a spreadsheet and you're like points, rebounds, assists, whatever, it's like, well, Cousins is on here. But like he was like, in the way that Divac was like the positive tone setter for like what made those Kings teams great, Cousins was just like, was the guy that was the reason they could never be good. It's just personality wise and leadership wise, like didn't work.
Wonder. I'll say this. I bet you if they never file Michael Malone, that DeMarcus Cousins is on this list right now. That would be my bold prediction.
Man. I just was in that locker room a few times. I don't think so, Dan. Hate to play that card, but I don't think so.
So your 5th would have been like Doug Christie. How far down the list were any of the modern day? Like who?
Honestly, I think you have to go Sabonis 5th. Just
wow.
The production's there. He was. I mean, and Fox is gone now, and Fox missed more time. Sabonis was just like unbreakable. And that other successful era for the Kings was a couple years ago, and Sabonis was like the guy for that. So I think it might have been him. Oh, here we go. Let's talk about it. I have the Spurs next. I said this. I said the Suns were the easiest one. This is right there. So Duncan, Parker, Ginobili, like no notes. It's just they're the big three on a team that won multiple titles. Stylistically, just some of the best basketball of my life. I still watch the Beautiful Game YouTube, like 7-minute clip on the Spurs, a minimum of like every 6 months, and I just get goosebumps every time.
The ball movement on that thing is bonkers.
It's like if I'm in the right mood, I could tear up watching the Beautiful Game Spurs YouTube video. I'll just say that about myself. Kawhi's the fourth. He comes towards the tail end of these three guys, but like prolongs the 20 years of success, I would say, because just is the best defensive player in the league a couple times before he leaves, develops into like a monster offensive player after most of these guys are gone, to the point where he's an MVP candidate towards the very end. So he has to be there. And the other three are I mean, there's no scenario where the other three are not on this list. I don't know what else we'd do.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiments right down to the big, beautiful game, some might call it. The other thing, this would be the franchise where it might be most interesting to build. What would the second team Mount Rushmore look like? Who is then on, like, is Wemby just already on it because we've never seen anything like him? Is it Bruce Bowen, Danny Green? Who are the names that this is totally immaterial because these are the only four picks. Like, who are you coming in with as a case over any of these guys? I think would Danny Green have the strongest as a fifth?
Danny Green was my very first thought of like, well, yeah, it just has to be because just the perfect 3-and-D role player of that era. Just like, and it's easy. I don't know. Maybe people listening or watching this remember, but like, he was insane defensively. Like he was one of the best like chase down block players like ever. Yep. It's just like why are you good at that? And he could lock up point guards and twos and just
won titles wherever he went. Basically, too.
It's not a coincidence. Danny Green is like the ultimate like it's not a coincidence guy. Everywhere he went, it was just like you fill vital roles. So he would be on there. Maybe you throw like Patty Boris Diaw again, not there for a long time, but was very much part of that Beautiful Game stuff. David Robinson, not there long enough in the 2000s. I mean, Aldridge was great for them when he was there, but like not a ton of team success. You probably rule out DeRozan for the same reason.
T-Mac?
I think they'd all come from like 2015 and before.
Yeah. No, I think these are the only four picks that you can make. We're on to the Raptors, Mount Rushmore since 2000. Here are my picks, and then let's get into why I thought they were tough. I have Vince Carter, DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi Leonard, and Kyle Lowry. I will not listen to any arguments against including Kyle Lowry, who is just the greatest Raptor of all time.
He's the only one I was like, there's no chance we argue about him.
The other thing is, I will not listen to arguments against Kawhi Leonard being on this list. He hit one of the biggest shots in NBA playoff history and then was the finals MVP on the Raptors' only title team. Like, that's just, it might speak to the franchise's dearth of historical moments, but like, you came in and did that. You're just going to make this list. That makes the rest of this list really tough because I think DeMar DeRozan and Vince Carter are ultimately the right answers. Vince Carter was like an error unto himself. Vinsanity was so much more than his athleticism. They never had a ton of success while he was there, but he was just still in his heyday. DeMar DeRozan wasn't on the Raptors title team, did get them Kawhi, who helped them get to the title, but he's their leading scorer. You can't talk about the history of the Toronto Raptors and not include DeMar DeRozan. But I will say, and I believe I was overthinking this, I initially had Pascal Siakam over Vince Carter. I looked at it as they made the same number of All-NBA teams, too. Pascal Siakam won Most Improved Player and was the third most important player on a title team, which Vince couldn't be the best or second most important player on a title team because those Toronto Raptors never got to that level. Mm-hmm. I ultimately think I probably was overthinking it in the context of this discussion because Vince Carter, there are some complicated feelings when you look back on his time with the organization. It seems like they've hashed a bunch of them out. But, like, do you remember Vince Carter on the like, that was he was appointment viewing. Yeah. That team was appointment viewing because of him. And to have that type of singular force, just even from a popularity or polarization standpoint, Pascal Siakam never became that. And so I think I was getting to, look at the spreadsheet involved with that one. What say you?
So I wholeheartedly agree with, like, whatever I said about Blake Griffin in the Clippers section and how it just became like you have to know like what did he do last night. Carter was that multiplied by a factor of like 10. It's just like the things he was doing just as a dunker, I think he in a lot of senses, he is the Toronto Raptors singularly defining figure because he was there extremely early in their existence and was just like the only thing most people knew about the Raptors is that they have this guy named Vince Carter and he dunks really cool and is also good, but like he is just the guy. Like I don't think the messy exit and the like decade plus of Raptors fans not liking him and the way that he left, I don't think that detracts from just like exactly what he meant and represented early in his career there. It's just there aren't a lot of teams that have a guy like him where he was more of like he was a phenomenon. Like it's just that put this franchise like made it relevant, even though those teams weren't even good. Like that. Imagine if they'd been good. That's a whole other thing. Like he just was singularly important.
He has to be there. Is he part of the reason that we just remember those jerseys as iconic too?
Yeah, he's the reason. I mean, who knows? Like Toronto seems to have drawn well. I'm sure there's a Raptors fan that could correct me on that throughout. But like, if there's no Vince Carter, are we talking about like the Seattle Raptors now, or like the Nashville Raptors? Like, are they there? You know, like if he doesn't make them like kind of a world, like it's certainly a national phenomenon. Like there was nothing. I don't know. I'm overstating.
I attribute it to Marcus Camby. So
you've always been a Damon Stoudemire guy. Tracy Mo Pete, you're a big Morris Peterson fan. Yeah, Carter has to be there. Siakam I get, especially if you're like, well, Raptors fans still don't like Vince Carter. Siakam, everybody was good with. It just has to be Vince.
I actually wonder though if Raptors fans would bounce Kawhi if they were to say Siakam or someone else has to be in here.
If you have one title and he's the sole reason you got it, like you can't.
That shot, do you remember watching him hit that shot against the Sixers? How many times, like just the bounce and like his crouching stance, which did he injure his knee?
In the corner.
Yeah, just like I was worried he was going to injure his knee. I was like, dude, get up, that's too deep.
Yeah. Get out of that squat. I got the Utah Jazz next, our final Western Conference team. They've had a number of fairly successful eras, and that made this hard. Rudy Gobert was the easiest pick. Multiple defensive player of the years. I think from a like driving team success standpoint, he was the best player on the like Conley, Mitchell, Royce O'Neal, who else is there? Bogdanovich, Jazz teams that like did finish first in offense a couple, like they were monsters for that stretch that group was together. Gobert's the representative there. Andre Kirilenko, one of the great forgotten players of the century. Injuries kind of knocked him off, fairly early, but like the stat I came across, Dan, he had 2 seasons where he averaged over 3 blocks per game. Gobert's never been above 2.7. It was just like how good Kirilenko was a monster defender. Had a bunch of 5x5 games, but like when nobody was doing that.
He's not that. I hate to say it, he's like one of those ball players because remember when Cooper Flagg was drawing comps to him, and people were talking about how insulting that was, and it very well may be, but it's also not.
Right, like he just like one of the singular most ruined everything for an offense when he was out there because he was a high steals guy. He could move his feet. He would block he was just ridiculous. So I had to have him there. It's interesting the Jazz have had such like era-defining defenders on their team. The other two, I packaged them together. Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer. Not a ton of team success, but Williams has 4,000 assists this century. That's twice as many as any other Jazz player in that stretch. So, like, even though maybe some people think about him as a net, I don't. He was just... There was a long conversation, I think, for a while there of, like, is Darren Williams actually better than Chris Paul? Because they were in the same draft class, and it wasn't settled right away. It obviously fell in Paul's favor pretty firmly, but he was excellent. Boozer's the guy I could understand moving, but he made a couple all-star games. He's the only 2010 guy that's not named, that's not Karl Malone, who doesn't count here. John Stockton, by the way, Stockton and Malone played like a couple years in the 2000s.
Yeah,
and
it was like 3
themselves.
And change or whatever it was. Yeah.
So they weren't there. If you're dropping someone, is it Boozer, and are you going to replace him with like Mitchell or somebody like that? Because I toyed with that, but I couldn't get there.
I think you could. It's also bizarre that like Gordon Hayward wouldn't pop up in this discussion. Like they have a lot of actually these Jazz teams throughout history, even recent vintage. Like they have a lot of really good players.
Paul Millsap, Derek Favors are real considerations there.
Do you think just because, or maybe I'm just not weighting how good the teams might have been with some of these other guys on there, but like I'm clearly most remember the Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell era teams. Is just we thought they were cap slot contenders. Like that's why I'm just wondering, should Donovan Mitchell belong here?
I think statistically, Mitchell doesn't have the numbers. I think he's like 8th or 9th, maybe 10th in win shares for the Jazz since 2000. But he was there for it's 5 full seasons. He was an all-star for 3 of them. Averaged 20 every year. Was like the go-to scorer on some of those really good Jazz offenses. Yeah, I think maybe it would have to be Mitchell, I think, if you're going to knock, I guess, Boozer off of there. I don't know. There's a case for that for sure. I always package Boozer and D-Will together for some reason, so maybe that was it.
The Jazz were a good kind of tough, just because I think they have a lot of viable options. Final team. Best, they're Mount Rushmore, Washington Wizards since 2000. I have Gilbert Arenas, Bradley Beal, John Wall are just the locks. Bradley Beal and John Wall have like top two all-time franchise like spots where John Wall leads the franchise in assists. Bradley Beal second all-time in points. Gilbert Arenas, just electric player while he was there, made all-NBA teams, was a megastar for a lot of his time with the Wizards. Then it gets a little dicey, but Anton Jameson just scored a bunch of points and also led this era in rebounds too. Yeah. And he's also kind of, when people talk about, I'm not the greatest scorer of a generation, but he's just like chilling at like number 43 all time in points scored. Like his longevity, that's not just for the Wizards. I think he's actually 8th. He's in the top 10 of scoring all time for the Wizards, which is actually pretty insane. He had a bunch of points and was able to grab rebounds, and I think he was there for like a good chunk of time. That he's the right pick here. I think when you get into some of the better teams where, and that's also why Bradley Beal and John Wall are no-brainers here, is they were the cornerstones of the last time we remember the Wizards as just a threat. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to talk about Brendan Haywood, Marcin Gortat, like Otto Porter, Caron Butler, like now with Larry Hughes, Eaton Thomas, like now we're really, who else is on here that you would need to think about? So there's probably room for interpretation on the 4th spot, but I don't know who I would go with if it wasn't Anton Jameson.
Yeah, I mean, Jameson just has the again, having watched a lot of Anton Jameson in my lifetime, he is very much like the empty stats guy, but they are what they are. Like this is a guy that he's had back-to-back 50-point games, not as a Wizard, but the buckets happened when Anton Jameson was in the game. He was a highly just productive. I don't know how much it meant. The guy I would think about is Caron Butler, because his apex, which would have been maybe he was with the team from 05-06 to 08-09 and got traded the following year. So wasn't there for a long time, but averaged 19-6 and 19-7 and 4 during that stretch and made 2 All-Star games and got DPOY votes in one of those. There was a second where Caron Butler was who might be one of the 5 best two-way players in the league. And he, we're talking Kobe's around, LeBron is there, but then you'd get down the list a little bit and be like, Caron Butler's actually like Kirilenko was your ball defensive guy. I think Butler for a second was the guy that you'd cite as who's actually really good that you don't know about. That he was that guy. The numbers are nowhere close to Jameson, so I won't fight you too hard on that. Also, the Wizards have just absolute crap to pick from. For
JaVale McGee, we got Andre Blash. Look, honestly, do you think some people, this would have been me, but well, Michael Jordan played 2 seasons in Washington, just pick him.
Sure, I mean he counts. It was after 2000. Yeah, I'm Marcin Gortat because without his illegal screening practices, John Wall wouldn't have been as good. Yeah, I don't know. Otto Porter wasn't there didn't do enough. Yeah, I think it's got to be the first 3 are easy. I think Jameson is fine at the 4th. I would advocate for Butler.
Yeah, I think Butler would be the toughest cut there. All right, we did it, Grant. And if you're listening to the full episode rather than the clips that are on Bleacher Report, we did this in what? Under $1:45? That's, and after editing, when I delete some of the silences, we might be under $1:43. Look at us.
And can you delete some of my picks that were bad too, and just AI cover for it and replace them?
Nope, they're forever. That's the beauty of this podcast. Everything is forever.
Well, Dan, thank you for engaging in this exercise with me. I don't know about you, but I really enjoy when I get to go back and think about, like, who was awesome in 2009. That's always a fun exercise. You remember guys like Kirilenko and Caron Butler, so that's a positive.
It's fun sometimes, but then with certain franchises, it's just like the Hornets. It's just not very fun.
No, it wasn't fun for them either. So you guys can commiserate. Anything else to add before we get out of here?
No, look, if this is your first time checking us out and you've watched or listened to the end, why have you not subscribed already?
Yeah.
Check out our if this is coming out, it'll come out during our Look Ahead series. So we're previewing every single NBA team with a guest. So go check those out.
Yeah, do all the things, rate, review, subscribe. If you're seeing this on YouTube, let us know who you would add and who you would exclude if you disagree.
Do you
with any
think
of the
we
picks.
have like an egregiast, like neither of us just caught? I
do.
definitely have to have
like,
one. Yeah.
Dwight Powell's got a giant like crosshairs on him from Mavs fans, I'm sure. That's okay. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, for watching. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.